Good afternoon and welcome to this Women in Engineering presentation. My name is Don Wright. I'm the Vice Chair of the IEEE Admission and Advancement Committee, and today I'm going to talk to you about IEEE Senior Membership and the Admission and Advancement Committee. You should note in the Ustream chat window that the presentation is shown. I'm going to use the presentation because there are a number of items that I'd like for you to be able to remember and to take away from the presentation. So I have provided it. You could feel free to print it, use it however you want, because there's some material there that I think is quite beneficial. So we'll move to page number 2 of the presentation. The IEEE Admission and Advancement Committee is responsible for senior grade membership elevation and recognition, in addition to a number of other items. Senior membership is the highest grade of IEEE members for which someone can self-nominate or be nominated. We hold senior review panels in all 10 geographies, or at least we try to, regions of the IEEE, spread out throughout the year. And at each of these senior review panels, we review all of the senior member applications that came in from around the world at the panel meetings. And so typically we will have something on the order of 250 to as many as 500 applications that will be reviewed by the panelists. The panelists are pulled from the local geography and will review all those applications. We'll move to slide 3 and just tell you that the ANA Committee is a standing committee of the Members and Geographic Activities Board, and it implements IEEE policies, rules, and procedures for admission and transfer of all grades of membership except honorary and fellow grade. There's a number of benefits to being a senior member, and those are shown on slide 4. For sections and societies, you may know that in order to hold certain volunteer leadership positions, senior membership status is required. So if your aspirations are to be the president of the IEEE, you must be a senior member of the IEEE. And similarly, there are other positions that require senior membership. We've noticed that senior members of the IEEE renew their membership at a higher rate than those who are not. And that typically means that the senior members are more engaged in the activities of the IEEE, recognize the benefits that the IEEE offers to them, and stay engaged with the IEEE. And on the average, senior members renew their membership 98% of the time. In addition, a greater percentage of IEEE senior members are members of societies and other activities within the IEEE. We'll move on to slide number 5, which shows you the current membership of the IEEE Admission and Advancement Committee. You'll note there's a member from each of the 10 regions plus a chair. Each of those 10 regional representatives are appointed to the committee based upon the recommendation of a region director. So that's, if you would like to serve on the ANA committee and you are a senior member, I would suggest that you talk to your region director and see if he or she can recommend you to that position. In addition, we have staff coming out of the MGA, and Lou Curcio is currently the operations manager that handles the ANA committee. As I said earlier, we will typically have senior review panel meetings around the globe, and you can see on slide 6 that the 2013 review panel meetings that are scheduled, all of them but the last, have been held at this point. The last one will be held on the Saturday during the IEEE Board of Directors series meeting in New Brunswick. So we have made great progress in that particular area. And as you can see, the locations are very diverse. The 2014 review schedule, you can see on slide 7. Again, a diverse set of locations spaced throughout the year, with exception of January and December, which are always difficult times to get things scheduled when new people come into offices at the first of the year, and too many holidays around the end of the year are also a problem. But we have a good set of meetings scheduled for 2014. On the slide number 8, just to give you a feel for how the membership is distributed, as of the end of last year, there were nearly 430,000 IEEE members in the 10 regions. And on slide 9, you'll see that each of the 10 regions has a goal. How many senior members do they want to try to get from each of the regions? And on this slide, number 9, you can see the progress to date. Some of the regions, like 8 and 10, are doing very, very well, considering there's one more, while others have a greater deal of difficulty in getting new senior members. But we work toward a fairly realistic goal to try to increase the number of senior members every year. Slide number 10 shows you some projects that the A&A committee has to date for 2013. The first one, this is obviously related to, is increasing the nominations of senior members from among the WIE, the Women in Engineering. And so this particular online presentation is in support of that goal. There are other areas there where we're still working to get more senior members through various means, improve our processes, etc., as we go throughout the year. Slide 11 shows you the global statistics for 2012 and 2013 after 8 panel meetings. So as I said, there's one more panel meeting left, and as you can see, we've reviewed a considerably larger number, 300, in excess of 300 to date, compared to where we were in 2012, which is a good showing. And our percentage approval is running fairly high, about 94%. The highest destination this particular year, we had over 99% of all applications were approved. So we're making good progress in getting the process being more efficient and effective, and getting more senior members to apply. Slide 12 starts a section of my discussion where we're going to talk about the process and how it's done and what the requirements are. Because I know many of the people watching this broadcast today are not senior members and would like to know what they have to do to be a senior member. I would note that in the Ustream chat, I've also posted under IEEE Senior Member Portal the web address that you would need to go to in order to start the process of completing your application. In addition, if you happen to already be a senior member and you're a reference for a potential senior member, you would go to this same location to see where there are applications pending that require your endorsement. So on slide 13 are the basic requirements for being a senior member. You must be an engineer, scientist, educator, technical executive, or originator in IEEE designated fields. And we'll get to that list of designated fields in just a minute, and you might be a little surprised by who's on that list. You have to have been in professional practice for at least 10 years and have shown significant performance over a period of at least 5 of those years. And we can take graduate work equivalent, where you're working full-time in graduate work or part-time graduate work while teaching or doing research in the IEEE designated fields, as the equivalent of professional experience. Slide 14 will show you those IEEE designated fields, and it's probably no surprise to you that engineering and computer and information technology are IEEE designated fields, but as are physical scientists, biological and medical sciences, mathematics, technical communications, education, law, and policy. So we often have applications from doctors and lawyers who are qualified to be senior members of the IEEE, and those are within the designated fields of the IEEE. Slide 15 shows you that those requirements again: 10 years of professional experience, 5 years of significant performance, and 3 references. On slide 16, you would note that you would normally need 3 references. However, if you are nominated, that is, you're not self-nominated, if someone nominates you, that would serve as one of the references. So 2 additional references are then needed. But in total, 3 people would have to nominate you to be a senior member. Slide 17 explains a somewhat complicated process of determining your number of years of professional experience. A candidate should have, as I said, a total of 10 years, but 3, 4, or 5 of it, and notice I said or, because you can get no more than 5 years of credit for your education, comes from based upon your degree. So if you have a BS, that's 3 years. If you have a master's, that's 4. If you have a PhD, that's 5 years of professional experience. Now we add on to that either 7, 6, or 5 years of professional practice, and that would depend upon the number of years you reach for your degree. And the total of those must equal or exceed 10 years. Now, you do not get credit for, you can't double count years of service. So if you happen to be doing research while you're working on your PhD, those years of doing research can count, or the PhD can count, but not both. So in many cases, it's easier to calculate after a master's degree, and then maybe you had 3 years of doing research while you were working on your PhD, so you're better off to claim credit for the 3 years of research versus the extra 1 year for having a PhD. But the panelists at each of these sessions this is explained to them so that they would have an understanding of how to review the material on the application and how to assess professional experience. Now, this is pretty easy versus when we talk about significant performance, which is starting on slide 18. We've tried to provide some examples based upon some work areas that you might be engaged in. So, for example, if you're teaching or doing research, maybe you're in industry where you're a practitioner or a consultant or an entrepreneur, or there's other contributions that can be considered across all 3 of these type of situations. This is a lot more qualitative than the counting the number of years of experience. So this is often an area that is difficult for some panelists to assess. And I've got some hints at the end of this presentation that would be useful if you're completing an application or if you're providing a reference for an applicant, of things to help those panelists see the kinds of significant performance you've been engaged in. So here's some examples on slide 19 for teaching. I'm not going to read through that list, but I would point out that obviously publishing in recognized journals, things like that, are things that are looked for. But in many cases, the applicant will try to wow the panelists by giving them 50 pages of publications. And in many of those, they're the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th author on a paper, which obviously means a lot more than if they were the first author. So be careful what you put in there, because you may confuse some of the panelists. There's also some other things. For example, being a department chair is considered significant performance. Supervising PhD candidates successfully can be significant performance. But in all cases, these are just some examples, and it's clearly not an exhaustive list. Slide 20 shows some examples for people who are working in research, and things like patents, for example, are a clear indication of successful performance. In industry, on slide 21, you can see some examples that are there. Obviously, patents is something that works there as well. But being a team leader, where you're providing technical leadership to a group of people, is significant performance. Being a supervisor, a product manager, program manager, having a director title, those are also considered significant performance. So you don't have to walk on water. You don't have to have the Nobel Prize in physics in order to demonstrate significant performance. So it's important that you consider those sort of things when you're putting together your application or you're providing a reference. I would note the red text at the bottom of slide 21, which points out that counting number of papers when someone is from industry is often not an effective way of assessing their performance, because many times in industry the work that's being done is confidential. If you're working on a new unannounced product for your company, the last thing they want you to do is publish papers about the things you've invented until the product is announced, the patent applications are filed, etc. So we try to remind panelists to not use papers as a complete assessment of technical significant performance. On slide 22 are some other examples of things that can be considered. They include recognized contributions to IEEE, volunteer efforts, especially positions of significant leadership. Saying that you're a member of the Lexington, Kentucky section, as I am, is really not significant performance. But perhaps saying that you served as the membership development person for Region 6 might be something that would be considered significant performance. This is a significant position with a responsibility and where you made achieved some significant results. So again, as I pointed out earlier, lawyers and doctors fit into some of these positions. So you'll note the last one, for example, successful patent prosecution over a number of years would be something that could be considered as significant performance. On slide 23, again, we point out that sometimes you make the assumption that significant performance requires special awards, and that's simply not the case. Substantial job responsibilities, which are rather imply that your employer or your university you work for, etc., has seen significant work result out of you and has given you a position of responsibility and leadership. So those are indicators of significant performance. Slide 24, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can go about successfully recruiting senior members. And I'm also going to give you some hints about filling out those senior member applications and references. So for example, on slide 25, the first thing that I would note is dates. Two of the requirements, 10 years of professional experience and 5 years of significant performance, require dates. How would you figure 10 years and 5 years without knowing the specific dates? So please make sure that all the dates are documented for every activity that you would wish to claim for either professional experience or significant performance. It has to be very clear. We don't have any way of knowing what you mean when you said, that you worked in 2002 on something. Did you work for a week? Did you work for a month? Was it the entire year? So be very clear, very explicit, and incorporate lots of dates into the material. Second thing I would suggest is to use some of those significant performance keywords that I showed you earlier in the presentation as a part of justifying the significant performance for an individual. You'll see here 4 examples that I've given using some of those keywords like team leader, being a manager, patents, supervising PhD candidates. These are very explicit, they're very clear, and again, with the dates that I've said you really need to include in the application, it becomes very easy for the panelists to see where the significant performance has been and over what period of time. I suggest you attach your resume or your CV to your senior member application, but that doesn't mean to cut and paste everything from your resume into the little box where it says describe your significant performance. because that's a needle in a haystack, and you're putting a challenge in front of the panelists who may not be able to find that significant performance. I suggest you write the text that goes into the significant performance box based upon those keywords you see on that same slide. Use those words, use those dates. It's great having the resume or CV attached, but there's no reason to duplicate that. Clearly identify what you've done that's significant, and put that in that box. When I'm running panels, I often tell the panelists, your job is to be a detective. And unfortunately, that's often the case, where you have to comb through 50 pages of papers and resumes, and being the lead investigator for this grant or that grant, and nothing really makes it clear what was significant about that. So please take my advice, and put those specific sort of keywords in your application, and attach the resume. But there's no reason to duplicate both of them, because the panelists will get the attached resume as well as the application. So make their job easier and show them the things that they're looking for right up front. One of the concepts that we've been playing with a lot is something we call a senior member roundup. And I've run a couple of those in my section, and I know there's been a couple in several other sections, but we've found them to be very effective, because many times senior member applicants are unable to find a senior member of the IEEE to be a reference or an endorser for them. People don't walk around with the term senior member stamped on their head, so no one knows whether your friend that works across the hall, or maybe somebody you know, whether they're a senior member or not. So what we've done is started having events sponsored by sections, regions, or other affinity groups like Gold or Young Professionals, and Women in Engineering could do it as well, to sponsor a senior member roundup. These are typically held at face-to-face sort of a venue. It works much better that way, and typically takes something on the order of 2 to 3 hours to do it. And in the end, you can end up with a lot of people having completed their application online during the event, and in fact, in many cases, the references are done right there as well. So it's a very effective process, especially if there's a reason why these people are all going to be in the same geographic location. Slide 27, a few hints for that. You really need to have internet access at the venue. Suggest that the potential senior members bring electronic and paper copies of their resumes or CVs. And then what we do is we pair up senior member applicants with senior members. And they can spend 10 or 15 minutes in a getting to know you sort of environment. The senior member potential referencer would then ask questions. What did you do here? Why is it significant? Etc. So they get an opportunity to know the applicant. And then the applicant can complete their online application right there at the meeting, and can list the 3 senior members they've just met, that they've just spent some time talking to, right there on their application. And in the case of the roundups I've held before, those senior references fill out the reference form immediately right there in the room. Everybody brings a laptop, and it's done. And in the course of 2 or 3 hours, could be longer depending upon the number of potential applicants you have, it's all done and it's in. And typically those applications will then be reviewed at the next panel, which, as you saw earlier, are held approximately every month. And if you followed my hints and you meet all the qualifications, you should be a senior member within a couple of months. Shouldn't be any problem whatsoever. So with that, I've finished the presentation portion of it. I'm open to taking some questions, and so I'll try to follow what's coming into the Facebook chat room and respond to the questions. So it says, from Hillary41, says, if I'd self-nominate for senior member level, do my 3 references have to be senior or fellow members? And the answer to that question is yes. The references have to be either senior members or fellow members in order to qualify as valid references or endorsers for your application. So, are there any other questions that anyone has about this process? I've gone through kind of quickly the slides because I don't want to focus on the slides, but I wanted you to have a package of material you could take away and use later. So, are there other questions? I don't see any other questions. Wait a minute, someone is typing. Um, Maybe not. Would like to take a minute and if you already are a senior member and you happen to be located in the geography where one of our panels is being held, if you will note for 2013, there's one panel being held in New Brunswick, the 23rd of November, and then the 2014 panels are also listed in the presentation. You should get an invitation to participate if you happen to be in that session, in that section. Let's see. I have a question. What about Russian candidates from region? I guess it's from region 8. 4 years for a BS degree. You may spend 4 years. If I understand the question correctly, virtually everywhere 4 years is spent getting the BS degree, but only 3 of those years are actually counted toward your professional experience. So it's basically worldwide. The equivalent of a BS degree is 3 years of credit. The equivalent of a master's or a master's of engineering is 4 years of credit, and a PhD is or doctorate is 5 years of credit. Yes, there's no reason why the material. There's a question from Jennifer Zernhill that can this presentation be used at the section level? Yes, feel free to use the presentation at the section level. Some of the items in here may or may not apply. They may not be useful to you, so you can feel free to take those out. For example, the ANA committee projects from 2013 may not be appropriate if you're presenting this next year, but feel free to use any of these slides that you think would be helpful and appropriate for any IEEE audience. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask at this time? Yes, again, this presentation can be used at section meetings, WIE meetings, region meetings, whatever is most useful. You may want, as I said, you may want to trim some of the slides out that you don't find to be appropriate for the audience, but you can use these any way you wish at IEEE events. So just to try to clarify the process, in most cases, an applicant would fill out the form online. And again, I posted the senior member application portal in the Ustream chat right before the presentation. And they would identify then their 3 potential references. So it's incumbent upon the applicant to have found those 3 references in advance of filling out the application. When the application is filled out and completed, each of those 3 references will receive an email that will tell them to go to a particular URL and to provide a reference. When that reference has been completed, all 3 of them, then the application is reviewed at the next senior member panel, and assuming that the application is approved, it will be the candidate will be elevated to senior membership. At the panel, at least 2 people will review the application and hopefully recommend for elevation. The process does allow for even more people to review it because 2 are required. So in some cases, there's a disagreement. The first reviewer may say that the person is qualified. The second one may say, well, I don't see that qualification. And then a third reviewist will look at the application and hopefully agree with one of those 2 assessments. But at the end of the panel, all the results are tallied, and the successful applicants will receive a communications from the IEEE telling them that they've been approved for senior membership. And then there's some various other communications that will occur. And that, in a nutshell, is the process. There was a question, this presentation was specific to WIE. Do we have a higher or lower percentage of senior members? I don't have any data on that. We don't look at the application and know whether a particular applicant is male or female, or whether they're we can tell whether they're within the 10 years of their degree, but we don't typically look at whether the person is male or female. And I'll have to ask Lou to potentially see if there's any material available from IEEE, some statistics that might point out whether a particular whether the WIE has a higher or lower percentage of senior members. How long is the process to become a senior member? Well, if your timing is perfect, it can happen in a month. If your timing is bad, I suppose it could take 3. But in any case, it's not a very long period of time once you've met the qualifications. So if you have the 10 years of professional experience and the 5 years of significant performance, it can happen very, very quickly. Question from how can we find out about senior member roundups? Senior member roundups are something that are initiated by the affinity group or the section, etc. The way I did it is I made a suggestion to the section chair of the Lexington section, where I'm a member, and we made some arrangements and planned one and executed on it. So we did one in 2012, we did one in 2013, and we typically, Lexington, Kentucky is not a large section, but we typically have come out with 5 to 10 senior member applicants out of each one of those roundups. So I've tried to put together a little communications for the Region 3 Membership Development newsletter, but it hasn't come out yet. But if you'd like, you can send me an email, and I can send you some text describing how it works. My email address is f.wright, W-R-I-G-H-T, at IEEE.org. And I'd be happy to share with you that material so that you can learn about roundups and potentially help get one planned. So I have a comment that Lou will get the information about the percentage of women in engineering who are senior members, and we'll distribute that to the person who asked the question. Do you need to contact my reference to complete the reference form? It's a good idea in advance to let your reference know that they will be listed on your form as a reference. But the automated system will send them an email after your application has been, you've submitted your application. They'll get an email telling them to approve it. If you'd like to follow up and remind them, I'm sure that would be fine as well. But I don't believe the process requires you to do that. It's automated. It's an automated part of the IEEE system. I've got a question: where can I find references? And that was one of the reasons that we started trying to have these roundups, is because it's difficult to have references. The first place I'd go is your section chair. Those are going to be people who are local, who you can talk to, who may know you already. But the section chair has access to IEEE tools that will allow them to print a report that shows them who are all the senior members in the section. So I would start with that and use that as a way to get started. Obviously, people that you maybe are working with under Women in Engineering or the IEEE Young Professionals program or any other affinity group, you might also be able to get them as references. So, you're at an event somewhere and it's an IEEE event, and you're interested in being a senior member and you've worked with somebody, just ask them, are you a senior member? And in many cases, you'll find they already are. And if not, maybe you find somebody who's wants to be a senior member just as well as you do. And maybe together you can find some references. But I'd start with your section chair. I have a question that says, if my application was not approved, how many times can you submit an application? Well, there's no limit to the number of times you can submit an application. But if the reason your application wasn't approved was because you only have 6 years of professional experience, it isn't going to do you any good to resubmit the application until you've reached 10 years of professional experience. So while there's no limit, obviously there's some practical considerations that you should take and understand why the application was not approved. Maybe all you need to do is clarify some material that was already there. Maybe you need to use some of my suggestions and use some of those keywords with dates, or whatever the case may be. But there's no limit to the number of times you can apply. But you need to use your judgment. Is how do you make the next panelist aware of those things that are going to show that you are qualified to be a senior member. Are there other applications? I'm sorry, other questions. I'm thinking of applications today. Well, I would invite you, if you already are a senior member, to see if you can find a panel in your area. If you already are a senior member, maybe you should take the initiative and work with the chair of your affinity group or your section or your chapter, and run one of these roundups and help other people that you work with and interact with on a daily basis or maybe monthly basis, to help them become a senior member as well. It doesn't take a lot of work to run one of these. We typically get a conference room in the university or a conference room at a company that has internet access. We bring in some pizzas and some sodas, and everybody sits around a table and fills out the applications, and it's a great time to get to know people, to understand what's going on in your particular geography or your affinity group, and help them become senior members as well. And it builds, because if you started with 5 and you get 5 every year, it doesn't take very long before you have a huge number of resources of senior members available to be references to others. So I would recommend looking at some structured ways to grow your particular group that you're working with in IEEE to have more and more senior members. I got a question that says, how many times can you make changes or updates to an application if it is a self-nomination? Well, once you've submitted the application, it becomes a little bit harder to make those changes, but it can be done. And I would suggest, before you actually hit the button at the end that says, I'm going to submit it, that you've reviewed it thoroughly, you've made sure you've got all the details you wanted to include, and you've made sure you've used some of those special keywords that demonstrate significant performance. And then if you have to make changes, if it's rejected or not approved or deferred, you're given an opportunity to update that application with new and more enlightening material. So this question I've already seen, which says if I self-nominate for senior membership, do my 3 references have to be senior or fellow members? And the answer to that is yes, they do have to be senior or fellow members in order to be references on an application. Any more questions that I can help with? Again, if you have any, I think my email address was posted in the Ustream chat. So feel free to send me any questions that might come to mind after the broadcast is over. I'll be happy to get back to you with whatever information I can provide. In addition, you can contact the staff. They can often be helpful in giving you information on, well, what's the status of my application, things like that. And as I said, Lou Curcio is on the call on the broadcast today with us, and his email address is l.curcio, Curcio, at IEEE.org. So he's the staff manager for the Admission and Advancement Committee, and he gets the joy and pleasure of coming to 10 regions around the world every year to put on panels along with the ANA chair. So that's this is Lou's reward for all that great service. There's a question: am I able to create more than one application? I don't believe that that's currently possible. If you have an application pending, you have to complete that application. If that application is rejected, I believe you get an opportunity to go in and change it, to edit it, but there's no provision for having multiple applications from the same applicant in the system at the same time. So you can have serially a set of applications, but there's only one at a time that's actually active. How can sections help with senior member recruitment? Well, they can mention it at the section meetings. They can identify people in the section who are senior members and who can be references. They can talk about the benefits that they've enjoyed being a senior member. It's especially something that is valued in the academic environment. So people who are working at universities, etc., it's often well received on their resume to indicate that they're senior members, and that's good recognition for them, and it's a career building sort of thing. So those are the sort of things that quickly come to mind beyond the obvious one of a section holding a senior member roundup. There's a question that says, do you have to know the person to provide a reference? Is it preferred to know the applicant? You don't have to know them. It's preferred that you do. And that's one of the reasons we have the sort of get to know you session, excuse me, the get to know you session at the roundups, where you have 15 minutes or so to actually know what that person's done, to ask questions, and then you can indicate, a higher level of knowledge about that person than just you were provided with a copy of the resume and you cut and paste from the resume and stuck it in your recommendation. So it's best if someone has some knowledge, firsthand knowledge, but it's not required that they have worked with you day in and day out for 5 years in order to be able to be your reference. Any other questions that I can answer? We're about 15 minutes or so from the end of the broadcast. So if you have your question, please type it into the chat window. How do I know if my references completed the reference form? I believe you receive an email when all 3 references have completed their form and completed that process, so that you know your application is, quote, complete at that point, and then it's a question of waiting for the next senior panel. So As I said, a lot of this has been automated. Used to be a lot of paper forms and faxes and mailing things in, but this is becoming a more and more automated process where you receive notifications as progress is made along the way. So you'll receive an email to tell you that your application is complete. So it's a bit of an awkward pause here, but I'm happy to stay around until we get all of the questions answered. And I don't see any further questions coming in. Again, feel free to contact me if you think of a question later. I'll be happy to respond, or you can email Lou, and he can respond as well. So with no further questions, I suppose we should wait a minute. I potentially got one coming in here. Or maybe it's instructions that we stop the broadcast, but let's see what it says. All right. So again, uh, please take a look at the material that I provided for you. I hope it's a useful reference. As I said, um, you can use it for any other activities you want. There's nothing there that's a secret. It's all there to help you become a senior member and to help others you know, if you already are a senior member, also become a senior member. So with that, I thank you for spending your time here today to learn about senior membership within the IEEE, and hope to run into you potentially at some IEEE event down the road at some time. So feel free to say hi if you see me. So with that, I will close down the broadcast and wish you all a great afternoon or morning or evening or whatever it is in your time zone. So thanks a lot. Have a great day.